Hey everyone! Big apologies. We've been having some behind the scenes technical difficulties, but what is a virtual event without those? If you don't know me, I'm Shaina Rose Woolley, Seed&Spark's events manager. I am currently on Kumyai land, and we encourage you all to figure out whose land you're on, since we're all watching and living and working and doing everything on stolen land, and it's super important to acknowledge where this land came from. If you are unfamiliar with Seed&Spark, we're a platform built to support creators wherever you are in the journey, from crowdfunding to creative distribution and education. Things like zine-making workshops are included in that. So I am really, really excited for today's session. I'm going to be talking to Meg Adler and Luis Blackaller. Luis, unfortunately, will only be on audio due to some of our technical difficulties, but I'm super excited to talk to both of you. Hello, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here in my basement.
Yes.
Hi, how are you? And I'm excited too, even though I'm just going to be audio, but that's okay. I guess my voice will do.
Yeah, hey. Your voice is great. We'll post some headshots of you later so people know what you look like. You're actually like a cyborg, because the image we used to promote this was all like glitchy, so people's only impression of you is like cyborg person, which is great.
Oh, let's change that right away. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah, there. That's better, right?
There we go. Cute. Now people can see your face. Okay, so first of all, Meg, will you just introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Meg Adler. I live in Oakland, California. I am an educator. I'm an illustrator. I am a wife. I am a cat parent. I am a daughter. I am all those things. And I'm here today because I have a small business called Letters Aligned. It's an illustration business that does a lot of different things, but I'm sure we'll get more into that as we go throughout.
Yeah. Luis, will you intro yourself?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Luis. I'm a filmmaker and a cartoonist, let's say, a visual artist with a tendency for narrative storytelling. I have been just jumping around media, different formats since, I can remember probably the late 70s or something like that, and bouncing around the continent up until I landed in LA about 10 years ago, where I work as a creative director in a virtual reality production studio called Weaver, and I've been working there for like about 8 years. In the meantime, I have, let's get to that later. I was starting to talk about my discovery of the LA scene culture and all that, but that's for later. Yeah.
Well, that's so cool that you creative direct virtual reality. That's like such an interesting world. So I guess first, I'd just love to ask you both, what do you define as a zine? What's your definition for zine?
Luis, you go first on this one.
Okay, that's funny because I was thinking about that question, and the reality of it is I don't think I'm qualified to have an informed answer. I have a sense of what zines are, but I would not know how to define them. I think that's part of what they are in a way. I came to discover zines through my love of comic books and independent comic books, and then self-published comic books, and then I discovered that there's this world of things where self-published comic books kind of like have found a home, which is the zine-making community that makes so much more. And it has to do with printmaking, but it's not just that. It has a lot to do with to me, just I guess, self-publishing, self-promoting, self-distributing art goods of some kind. But that's not a definition. It's just an impression. I don't really know how to define it.
Yeah, I mean, I think your answer is great, and I don't really know how to define it either, which is one of the reasons I asked you to, because I was curious what your answer would be. Meg, do you have one?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you said all of that, Luis, because I kind of think about it in a very similar way. It's like this garage band of visual art. It's like this very improv group. Like it's a little amateur, it's a little rough, it's local or not, but it's like small numbers. It's about expression and less about like, marketing as much. I mean, you might sell a zine, but I think even in some circles, maybe that's not cool. I think it's just this way of putting down what you want to put down and not worrying so much about all the other stuff. And it's kind of like a low stakes form of art. It's kind of like journaling, but for others. I don't know. There's so many different things. I don't think you can get to the definition as much as you can just like say things that are orbiting what is a zine.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I did a little collection of like what zines I have. Like, here's a little zine that I made my girlfriend for her birthday. It's like I just like collaged and printed out poems and like, and then I have some zines like this is one of my favorite zines. It's like just all these amazing like graphics, and this one's like a little bit more like, I don't know, put together and like fancy than mine, but at the same time it's still just stapled together. It just has like a cooler cover, you know what I mean? Yeah, so I think, and then zines can also be much more like kind of fancy and like bound, but there's just so many options with, it's just a way to really like get your art out there in a low stakes way, which is so great because sometimes it can feel like so much pressure if all this money is going into a project. Like, zines just don't have that same kind of pressure, which is why I love them. So I want to get a little practical now and talk about how you actually make zines. So what is your process?
Should I go first or Luis? You tell us, Shaina.
Okay, Meg, you go first because you're already talking.
All right. So I make mostly zines out of 8.5 by 11 printer copy paper. And I'm going to show you how to actually make a zine. So, I've done a couple different things. I brought a couple to show, for example. So this one, for example, it's called Planting. It's a poem and it's taped and it's got a bunch of little pieces of paper. Oh, I'm on the mirror view, so I went the other way. But this is less common for me. I normally make a zine that's more like this. So this is one of my favorite zines I've made, and I made copies of it. It's a little book for creativity, and it's called This Is Not a Paperclip. And basically, it's like that. And so I'm going to show you how to fold that. Yeah? So little practical skills.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes.
So this is the end product, and this is the raw material. So we're going to go back to elementary school for a moment, and you're going to fold it. I think we called this hamburger, but maybe these days we should call it, I don't know, Impossible Burger or some sort of vegetable. I don't know. It's also, the fancy art, like, is it portrait or landscape? I don't know. Okay, so you're going to do that. You're going to do a crease. Then you're going to do, I'm sure what you saw coming next, which is the other way. Almost anytime you fold it one way, you fold it the other way. You got to get those creases in. Can you tell that I'm a camp counselor person? Okay. And a teacher. All right. So, and I want to fold it up here so you can see it. It doesn't have to be perfect, though. That's another part of a zine. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. Then I'm going to bring this down a little so you can see. Perfect. Then you're going to fold on each side to that center line, just like that. You're going to crease, okay? And the other one. And then you're going to fold both sides as, whoops, like that, okay? And then you're going to kind of crease it on the other way as well. So you're getting the full thing. So you can always go back and rewatch this video if you need to learn how to fold a zine, or I'm sure there's a million videos out there. And also I'm sure if you have like a niece or nephew or, younger child in your family of some sort, they can teach you too. Okay. But then here's where it gets exciting. So I'll bring this back up. You've got all these folds. Wow. what you're going to do is you're going to rip or cut the line that comes from here to here, but not all the way. So you fold it like a mountain. You take this little part here, and I like to, I'll kind of put it down. You know how you bring it down and then you rip it like that? Just like that, okay? Mountain, side, rip. And then, what? And then you have a little book. You have a little book, and what you can do is then you can plan out what pages you have, and then you can open it back up and draw on it, if you know which page is what. And that way, also, if you want to use like paint or marker, you don't kind of, it doesn't bleed through. And that is how to make a zine. One way of a zine.
Cool. So when you like make copies of the flattened piece of paper, all the markings are on the same side. So it's just like you just make a regular copy and just do the tear and then fold it up.
Exactly. So this is a zine. I'm going to be making copies. It's for some of my work at Camp Salonga. It's for all my students. So I'm going to make 130 of these, for example, and then kids will be able to, I might do some of them for them, I'm not sure, fold and cut. One thing you want to be aware of is just practical tips is when you print it, you know, the margins on the paper and all that, you want to make sure it's kind of going to fit well. But as long as you minimize the margins and or if you manipulate it in like Photoshop or whatnot, you can really just stretch out your drawing to the edge. And then, yeah, you kind of know already what's going to be on each page. What are you grateful for? Take 3 deep breaths. It's the most fun. And they're like the cutest little thingies.
Yeah, they are really cute. Cool. Luis, will you please talk about your process now? And I'm really excited that both of you are here because you make such different work, and that's really cool.
Yeah. By the way, I have done that too. It's like when I discovered that, where I was like, that's really cool. If you printed both sides, it gives you 16 pages of stuff. Yeah, so you know, I wouldn't say I'm more like driven by impulse, I guess, and I just kind of like think about, okay, what can I do now? And what happened to me last year, at the end of last year, 2019, is that like I I I got my hands on a risograph printer that a friend of mine got, and just to explain a little bit, these risograph printers are these sort of for anyone that doesn't know, they are this sort of photocopier machine that uses offset ink drums instead of toner, and you can basically run the paper, like put the drum with the blue, run the paper through, and then take the blue out and put in the pink, and run the paper through again, and then take the pink out and put the yellow in, and run the paper. And it's like really fast and, you know, like pretty affordable in terms of like you do it yourself, you're paying for the paper and the ink and stuff, and like whoever gives you a chance to play with one of those things. And you can get this really interesting looking publications that look like they were printed 70 years ago, but with these neon colors that come out of like, the risograph printer is something that's made in Japan, and it can like somewhat, I believe, represents this like very vibrant, strident color palette or their popular culture, whatever. So like, got on one of those, and then I was like, you know what, it's time I started like just doing some scenes and trying to get on like the scene fests and the art book fairs and all that, and see what that went. So first thing I did is like I started looking back at like a bunch of art that I've made over the years and tried to think about, okay, how can I use that to kind of like make some kind of quarterly publication ideas. And I came up with like 2 things that were, one of them is based on a collection of street photography that I have made. I'm originally from Mexico City, and I've been taking pictures since I remember on the streets, right, of like whatever I find interesting or compelling or tragic or lovely or whatever it is, and I have a million of them. And I think they are really good as images, but some of them at some point during the 90s, I started using a very crappy digital camera. It was the best I could find, but they were all crappy back then. And the photos look like, videos from the 80s, even though they are photographs. And, you can't really like claim much of a photography art form with that.
Oh, did we lose you?
Kind of like color separation process, and then I threw them into the risograph printer. Like the loss of fidelity that the camera had was actually a feature for the risograph printer to take and make good. So I thought about making a thing that was like a little tiny half letter sized, which is another thing that's interesting about zines that has a lot to do with what Meg just said. Is you take a piece of paper, like you can find it in, like, your drawer, and you use that as your publishing format, then you have, like, you let go of a lot of the production costs that come from making a publication. You don't have to cut the paper, you don't have to resize it, all those kinds of things, right? So these things are letter size, folded in half, and then trimmed a little bit on top and bottom. And they are just anthologies of like little walks.
Yeah, I mean, your photography zine is so beautiful. And as somebody who, like, I recently printed some of my own digital photographs for the first time, and like I had so much trouble with printing and getting the colors the way that I like had them in my head versus how they were on the paper, or like rather how they were on the screen versus how they were on the paper.
Right.
So how have you dealt with that with printing? Because somebody actually asked, Billy Walker asked, can a zine be exclusively pictures and video as opposed to drawing? Well, because I don't know how video would work unless it's like video stills. But yeah, one of Luis's zines is fully pictures. It's all street photography. But will you talk about your process of like getting the printed photo zine to like look the way you wanted it to?
Oh yeah, that's great. And that was actually, I'd say that it helps if you have a printmaking background or a graphic design background like I do. And if you've had done things that are, DIY for a while. Basically, you take your digital photograph, it is gonna be in some color format, right? It will be like RGB or CMYK or one of those things. And, it looks the way you like it. Probably you even already saw how it will look like printed through like a traditional format, and you are happy with that. And then when you think about, all right, you could just do black and white, and then it's easy, right? You could just photocopy it, and that's a look, right? That's a way you could do it, in my opinion, right? But if you go, the risograph thing has like this richness to it, because you have, if you stumble upon the right print shop, and there are some of those everywhere. There's a ton in the Bay Area and a few in LA, and they are everywhere in the world right now. There's an actual website that shows you where you can find them in the world. It's like a community within itself, within the zine world, I guess. Uh, you have like 50 different colors that you can choose from to start thinking about what will happen with your photograph. And then you have to think like you're making a silk screen or a screen print or something like that, right? You have to go back to thinking about color channels and things like that, and duotones, in which you have a color photograph. You have to understand it, and it's actually a combination of different black and white photographs that filter the different colors through a chemical process, right? In the digital world, there's a similar metaphor to that. When you go to a program like Photoshop, there's a thing called I could give a tutorial about that later, but because it gets technical. The fact is, you look at all the colors, you think through it. I was like, this is kind of like a tribute to the city I grew up in, and where I spent the first like 36 years of my life. Basically, I wanted it to be kind of like, okay, I'm just gonna kind of like find the best way of doing that conceptually. And I thought, it's like the colors in the Mexican flag are red and green, and I know they are kind of like somewhat complementary colors in the color space. And I went and tried to find the right tones within the spectrum of things that existed in the risograph, like in catalog, to get me a duotone that combines some kind of red and some kind of green to give me like these things. Red and green combined do hit the blacks very well, and they have this like really rich spectrum of browns, which is to me very representative as well, obviously, of uh like I think Mexican culture is a brown culture, and I embrace it totally, right? So I wanted to be red, green, blue, and brown, and see if I could get away with that. I mean, red, green, and brown, no blue. Sorry, I don't know where that came from. But I found this like bright red and this tangerine color. It started working out. I actually found the one called teal first, and then they started working out really well in the computer. I hooked up a print shop with a print shop in Pennsylvania called Resolve, and I tried out a few. See that like that river there? It's just brown. It's like, and there's nothing but green and red, and they just hit it really well. This print shop, they ran some tests for me, and the teal was not working, so we tried another color called tangerine, and it just worked. And you have to spend a lot of time with your photograph that has three colors, so that you have something that is only two colors, and then you basically adjust the grayscale values until they hit that sweet spot on your screen. And then once you have that, then you have to print and find out if it's coming out right. But at that point, it's just a trial and error that gets resolved somewhat quickly.
Yeah, and it's so interesting for you to say that, like, there's really, you really focused on like those three colors, because I mean, I saw that looking at all these images, they totally look like they go together so beautifully, but I didn't realize that like the same exact colors are in all of them, which is what makes them such a beautiful, like, cohesive, piece. So yeah, so what I've been scrolling through is Luis's zine called Zine Defectuoso, perfect timing, which is street photography from like many decades of street photography in Mexico City. So yeah, really beautiful. That, I mean, I just learned so much about how I should be handling printing. And
Thank you. And something that I have to add is that I just remember like the original choice why I went with two colors immediately was because it reduces the production cost immensely if you use two colors instead of three or four, because you can run the two colors in a single machine as a single pass, and then the registrations are perfect. If you have three colors or four colors, you have to do another pass. If you're doing it by yourself, it's just more work. It's fine. But if you hired a print shop to do it for you, then it becomes double the price, right? Per thing. And to me, it was very important that I could print these publications as cheaply as possible, which I think is also something that kind of like honors the nature of the thing, even if you're like, hiring somebody and paying them to do it for you, because, somebody that's like a specialized print shop like that, they obviously will do a way better job than I could do. They are masters of this printing machine.
yeah.
But so yeah, it's a combination of that. It's,
Do you see this question from Rain, which is, so you saw green and red colors while photographing, or it was in the color grading when you selected those colors?
Great question. So I was not, it's street photography. I was not choosing the colors while photographing. But the funny thing is, I mean, they were just there, because they are just, the green is this lush vegetation that's everywhere in Mexico City, and the red is like all this urban stuff, and like it's brown place. I happen to be pink, but most of us are brown, so it's just there. So it was definitely more of a color grading effort, but it was a deliberate choice, and I did tweak things, but didn't really replace any colors. It's just the natural way of like extracting the vibrance from where it was and then trying to homogenize the rest, I guess. Yeah, color grading. That's the answer.
Cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Or maybe some combination. So thinking about for telling us about your process. Will you tell us, so, okay, Luis, basically one thing that you told me and that you've kind of been alluding to is that the zines that you made, you really wanted a container to show all this unpublished work that you just wanted a place for. And then Meg, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like your intentions when you create a zine and like, you know, just how the process of deciding to actually make one works for you.
Yeah, so and Luis, this is so cool learning from you. That your photography is just gorgeous. So I'm a teacher, and I'm a very like functional art. I like when educational materials are really beautiful. I like when they're really accessible. I like thinking about how much we can take in terms of learning at once. And so I have different kind of buckets of why I make zines, right? So I have a whole series where I did mini biographies just as things were coming up in the last several months. I decided to teach through zines. So I made a mini bio on Ida B. Wells, a mini bio on Angela Davis, a mini bio on Callie House, who is maybe a lesser known person, but please research her. She's unbelievably influential, and Audre Lorde. And so I would use the zine to make a little series. You know, you've got your bio, you've got your fun facts page. Oh, sorry, I'm getting used to this. You've got your quote. And so that's, whoops, they jumped too. And so that's fun, and it tells people to learn more. So that's like one bucket. And then I've also done, you know, the March on Washington, things you should have learned in class, or Stonewall, a brief history, right? And you kind of go through, or if I want people to learn about HR 40, right? You can get political with your zines, and they can be like informational pocket guides. Okay, so these are pocket guides. I also like to use zines to make activity books. So I make coloring books, I make curricula, and so these are little mini curricula books, right? A little mini coloring book that you can just super simple, and it's fun. And I sometimes include these when I ship out products as just free, right? Like just have a zine, right? This one is like, I was thinking about doing like a monthly subscription, like a 50-cent magazine type thing, and you get little prompts. So that was, I didn't follow through with it, but I made the first edition. It was going to be called Spark. So, you know, no one take that name in case I want to do it later, or do, I don't know, just like let me in on it. And this one, again, is the paperclip, which is one of my favorites. It's based off of a game. Okay, two more categories. Oh, no, a couple more categories. One is just super fun and silly and random. This one is a meditation on bubbles. This one's super fun. It's just like, bubbles are rainbow breath. Bubbles make up foam, right? Sometimes they hold thoughts, sometimes increased housing costs. Bubbles are a yummy snack, little perfect pockets of joy, right? Like nonsense. Like, what is this for? Nothing. I wanted to use a pink color. That's literally what it's for. Then one of my more favorite ones is I watch Shark Tank for fun when I want to tune out of the world. And so I made a little guide to how to not be a dum-dum on Shark Tank, because I was so sick of watching Shark Tank. So these are the dumb ones, and they're so fun to make, because this is the epitome of just make art because it feels good, right? Just make marks on a page because it feels good to do it. That's what these are for. The next bucket is things I revisit. So I have for my company a little mission statement. So I have a little mission statement book, and I use this all the time to teach people about my mission statement. I'm Jewish and I celebrate Shabbat, and so I made a little Shabbat blessing book, right? And these are so sweet. These are like, you can do for anything. The blessings, this one's in Hebrew, so you know. And then the last bucket is poetry. So I'm also a poet, and some I write of my own and some I like to write down. So for example, Whitey on the Moon felt really relevant. I'd heard it a long time ago, and I wanted to, by Gil Scott-Heron, and I wanted to make a zine, and this one's kind of got a cool little thing here.
So are these zines other people? Oh, I think Lewis just dropped off.
Yeah. So, oh, okay. Well, please come back. There he is. This is someone else's poetry. Yep, Gil Scott-Heron. This is a Mary Oliver poem, one of my favorites, morning poem.
Good one.
And then I have some personal poetry as well. This is some little love poems. This one's a different format. This is taped paper. This was for my wife. I made all of these little mini poems I'd been writing. You are the chopstick. I am the chopstick to your chopstick, that kind of a thing. Just, again, super silly. So I would say for me, zines have so many different uses, but I generally, if I had to put it all together, I would say it's a way of sharing what I'm thinking about, what I want people to learn. They're kind of just like, they're almost like acoustic posts, right? They're like acoustic Instagram or Twitter posts. They're like real-time screen-free posts. So that's what I choose to make them about.
Yeah, totally. So, and I notice, I follow you on Instagram, and a lot of times you'll post like scans or even a video of you like reading your zine and opening it. So I just think that's really interesting how you're talking about like how, it's like analog Instagram, but you're also sharing them on Instagram. So it's like for you, it sounds like maybe the process of making them offline with just like a pen and paper is really valuable.
Yeah, I definitely just like to make them. I think you have to like what you're doing. If you're sitting down making a zine, you're like, I hate making zines. This is stupid. Like, it's like so not it's like not important enough to not make it. So you have to like making zines, first of all. I like sharing them. I think it's a good way to shake up what's on the internet in terms of what we're posting. I think handmade things are sacred. I think they're personal. And that's the community I'm in. My grandmother was a calligraphy artist. So it's also just, it's kind of a nice melding. But then I also love sending them. They're the easiest, they're a piece of paper. So I'll send them to people just for fun. Like, hey, happy Friday, here's the zine, and I'll put it in an envelope. And I think someone in the comment wrote pocket activism. Yeah, they're sweet. And also, they just bring joy. Like, their smallness brings joy. And so, but not so much that if you wanted to recycle it, you could, like you give someone a gift, and sometimes you can overwhelm people with gifts. I can do this, but if you give them something that's like small enough that it's like, also I could get it another time, or I could make a copy of it, or I could scan it and have it forever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely. Luis, how do you share your zines, and where do you sell them or share them?
Well, that's something that I'm still figuring out. If we go back to, historically, what can I say? The first time I made something that could qualify as zines was around 1986 when I was in high school. And those were, if you looked at them today, they would be zines. But back then, me and my friends from high school were trying to make a literary magazine. We sold it in the, subway stations and parks of Mexico City. And that was that, and et cetera, et cetera. But like, then I kind of like stopped making any of that, just out of like, I don't know, just getting lost in life for like a while, up until very recently. Like, I've been making things and not making them, but there was pretty much since I arrived to LA up until now, which is about 10 years, where I just focused on parenting and work, and had very little time to think about what I personally wanted to do a little bit. But it was always there, making me feel bad about not doing it, right? So last year, I somehow started just making things. I managed to make a short film, and I managed to start thinking about these things and like making them and going, yeah, I'm gonna go to LA Zine Fest this time around, not as happy consumer that loves what he finds and collects it every time I go every year, or Comic Arts LA, same thing. Those are two great ones that I really love to go to every year, local to LA. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to go to all these fairs, and I'm just going to meet a lot of people, and I want to learn what they think about what I make, and we're going to all that stuff. Every time I encounter somebody like Meg sitting on a table on a zine fest, and they have their, universe of things, it's just wonderful to chat and having the opportunity to have something to bounce back when I'm doing that, it would be great. So I was looking forward to that, and then COVID happened, right? It's like, oh, let's go online. So no Zine Fests. I mean, they exist virtually, and there are events kind of like this. There's one happening in Orange County right now that I didn't know about, by the way, that I should go check out. I saw some pretty interesting stuff like paper cut things that are just paper cut origami style kind of things, like cool stuff, right? But uh, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna just try out this kind of like online thing, and I started an Instagram account to start promoting the stuff, and then I started thinking about like making more things that were not necessarily publications, but that kind of like reinforce the graphics that I make or the stories that I want to tell and things like that. So I started making things like fake poster stamps and bandanas, and that's all I've made so far. But I also went on I was like, okay, so if you have an online store, that's yours. Are there any free platforms out there that you can use that give you all the features so that you can actually have your online store with everything it entails? So I went on that rabbit hole and like found some options and committed to a couple of them. And I've been learning how to put together my own store and the whole shipping experience. I love packaging, it's something I just really like as a kind of thing. So they can be found on. I've been distributing these things online, like trying to kind of like just raise some awareness of my existence on Instagram and the stuff I do, and pushing this little store where like it's kind of like a hobby. It's not like I'm gonna be able to ever live off it, but at least the stuff goes out there and reaches out to somebody, which to me is kind of like the best reward, I guess.
Totally. Yeah, I hear that so much. And I'm sure just like, oh, I was so excited to go to LA Zine Fest last year, and I like got really sick on that day, and I was so sad to miss it. But I just such a like beautiful image of just like, all these like such a diverse set of people just like sharing the things that they care about in a room where everyone wants to just like see what is on everyone else's table. Like I'm very excited for that. And
it's the most diverse, low-key, goofy, lovable community I've ever encountered. I think it's just so crazy. And both LA Zine Fest and Comic Arts LA, which are the only ones I frequent up until now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. So, why do you both think zines are an important art form? And,
I think the accessibility. I think the lack of pressure. I think, again, working with kids, I notice already when they're a couple years old, they decide if they're good at art or not. And if you're good at art, you can use fancy materials and you can do all these big things and you can write a book and you can do all these things. And if you're not, you're kind of done and that's it. And what happens is you end up with adults later who say, oh, I can't even draw a stick figure, which is, listen, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And I know why you're saying it, but it's like you can. Like, that's the point, is like you can draw a stick figure. And I think it's just such an accessible way, and you need that. It's like if you need to, let's say it's the best way to write a book. I think you're writing a book. Like, here's one I wanted to show. One of my nieces, she made me a story from one of the stories we tell, and it's a zine. You know what I mean? Like, it's not replicable, but it's a zine. And I'm self-publishing my first book right now, and I guess some people could call it a zine, right? Like, I think it's a really charming art form, and I think you can take it seriously, but I think there's this beauty that, it's just, I think accessible is really the number one word for me here. I'm trying to think of like other art forms that might have a similar, maybe like animation or something, like you can tell really, I guess that in terms of like the technicality, I have no idea what goes in animation. Please, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I'm sure animation is the hardest thing in the world, but you can get across like the same, story to all ages. You can get across simple, I don't know. I'm getting lost in my words, but I think the sentiment has been heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's I think it's a sort of freedom that, I mean, it has to do with what you just said. It's a sort of freedom that you can't really find anywhere else, and it comes from the low-key nature of the way things are set up within kind of like what you would call the zine world, right? There's no commitment to formats or markets or audiences or whatever it is, right? You go to one of the zine fests and you realize that like you can find anything on those things, right? Like from printed stuff to, like, eggs made out of clay that you opened up and have baby clay chicken in them, and they sell them to you for $2, and it's just, you just go like, what? It's just, I think it's, you can go in there and literally you made whatever you wanted, and you put it out there, and you are directly connected with your audience in some way. I'm talking kind of like about festivals, like the Zine Fest thing. But the way you make them, it's kind of like you are able to do that, right? Because, for example, Meg, you take them to your classroom, right? I take them with me wherever I want, because they are not something that got printed for me by a publishing company that has a deal with me that entails that I get 50 of them to give to my friends, and the rest are like, who knows where. There's this separation, right? In this case, it's kind of like you made 100, they are in your garage, you have to figure out how to get rid of them, right? Like, it's your problem, and that is something that I find very rewarding. Like, I have full connection with the stuff I make. So I guess the accessibility, definitely, the freedom to do whatever you want, definitely, but also a sort of responsibility or awareness that comes from like owning the whole process, which I don't know if I just thought about, like, something I've been thinking about a lot is like how like, what can you say to a community of filmmakers about how to connect with this medium, and it has to do with all that, but maybe we can talk about that further.
Yeah, so actually a question from Matthew Bryan is, I was thinking of possibly using zines for some low pressure marketing for a short film. Any advice or experience with this? If I haven't said it already, you guys kick ass.
That's awesome. Thank you. I have some ideas, actually. So I was thinking, it's a great way to test things. Like, you can test a storyboard. I mean, like, what if I had to fit my story into 8 pages? You could think about how the story moves through. My sister's a writer, so we talk about like mapping stories a lot. Another thing is, I mean, if you did an 8.5 by 11, and I saw a comment, so Allie, I'll get your comment as well. She's a friend. Thanks for being here. I use printer paper. It's so, like, I just get reams of paper. I go through it so quickly anyway, and of course recycle. But you could make a really cool poster, and like Louise said, you actually can print on both sides. Because I do mine hand done and use sometimes like marker that bleeds. It's trickier, but if you were to scan it in and then print it, you could do like a poster for the movie on one side. And then on the other side, you could do like about like a little book of the movie, or like some sort of keepsake, or about the movie, and it's like a little book, or even about the creator. And so that's what is also so cool about zines, is like the creativity already is there. I could see you do a little like theatrical trailer in a zine, right? Like, coming soon to theaters near you, a movie about blah, 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 blah. Don't forget there's this incredible hook, shwoobity shwoobity shmop, credit, right? Like, that's, to me, a theatrical trailer. So with some music in the back, it would be funny. You could put music in the background, like some score that's super intense, and you just don't even speak. You just like hold it up.
So you're talking about like you would take a video of yourself, just like go like with just a close up of hands going through.
You could, and then you could offer the zine as like promotional. Like, you just saw it here. Here's the theatrical trailer. Get it. do it yourself on the thing,
Yeah.
and then you spread by word of mouth, by word of zine.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mean to plug Seed&Spark so hard, but our Lunch and Learn next week is actually about incentives for crowdfunding, and Meg is giving me huge ideas. Like, you know, a really low-level incentive for like $25 could be, we're going to send you a digital copy of the zine that tells the story in 6 pages about our film, and then you can fold it up, print it out and fold it up yourself. Or if you give $40, we're going to mail you one that's already, you know, printed out and folded up. So yeah, such good ideas. Luis, do you have any ideas of, like, you know, how to market
I
it?
actually I do, and I'm gonna take it like beyond the marketing and hit on the transmedia thing, right? Which you know, it's like whatever. I did use that word right now, and you know, uh, thanks Matthew for thinking that we keep gas. We're just trying. Thank you. But like as I said, I made a short film with a few friends last year, and it was written by a writer actor friend I know called Sorshil, and her story was based on a personal story, but it pretty much read to me as as a classic pulp crimes urban legend kind of story from the newsstands of, like, again, Mexico City, right? And back there we used to have they're probably still around, but they were everywhere back then. We used to have these things called fotonovelas, which were basically comic books made with photography that, if you think about them, is like making a movie out of stills, right? So as we shot this movie, I was already exploring this like idea of making scenes, and I thought about like making a photonovela that could be used for marketing and promotional purposes that told the same story, but you know, in a completely different way, and you know, stepped out from what you're showing on camera in your film and told a different aspect of the story. You know, you have thought bubbles, so if you can imagine, you can just grab your film, take out some frames, organize them as a comic book page, and start kind of like giving the characters, represented by the pictures of the actors, voices that were not heard within the narrative of the movie. So it somewhat complements the story in some way, and it it has this outlet that is, uh, again, kind of like honoring a format from a particular form of popular culture that has to do with the story you are telling in this case. So there's a way in which you can think about this, uh, artifacts and objects as actually part of the work of art that you're making, in a way that goes, you know, like a poster is a work of art for sure, but it could be also something that adds to the story in some way, or that complements it in some way, or reflects upon it in some way. You know, just to go on, like, on my little rant, I I learned about, you know, graphic design and printmaking and all that because I had early career working as a graphic artist in film, and one of the things I had to do, for, you know, the art department, whether it is props or set dressing or like stages or whatever, was make a ton of like fake stuff that looked like it existed, you know, whether it was some like the documents in somebody's wallet or a fashion magazine or a billboard or like the whole identity of a fake bank. You have to make it so that it can be. That's before computers were used for visual effects that much, right? It,
Yeah.
you had to make it so that you can put it on the set so that it could be filmed, and then it would be there. Throughout this, you know, process, I ended up like making a ton of fake books, that were just, you know, one shots, like the zine that you made with your family member that you just showed me. Like, they just existed. It was one of them or five of them. They used them for the shoot, and then it's gone. But when I went to the process of making them, I ended up, like, you know, writing the story and illustrating them and coming up with all this stuff that never made it anywhere. Now, if you do something like that and it's in the movie and you have a collaborator that can bring in some sort of like additional meat to the world and with the story occurs, like why not, as you not just have a marketing material, you have a very cheap way of like small mass producing these art objects that tell something else about like.
Yeah, totally. You're reminding me so much. So I actually studied media arts and practice in school, and so much of what I focused on throughout college was transmedia storytelling and this idea of like, okay, so you made a film, so now you're going to make a zine about the film, but how is the zine going to enhance this,
Hi.
and like it's about like
Guys.
using a bunch of different mediums to tell one story that comes full circle. And then it's so great for like super fans, because if you're like a super fan of anything, it's like you like found out like, it's more of the backstory of your favorite character because like you got the comic book that the movie that came out after the movie was made. And like it's a really cool way to engage an audience like for a long time and like make sure that like, even if you make a trilogy action, movie, and there's 3 movies, okay, the movies are done. We're not planning on making any more movies, but there's still all these other ways that, that you can like keep people engaged and learning new things about the story. And like, I think zines are just a really low budget way to do that.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we're getting really close to the end. I appreciate both of you being here so much. I've learned so much about both of you. I've literally so many ideas for zines in my head right now. Like I need to immediately write them all down. Is there anything else that either of you want to add? Any like final thoughts?
Oh, last 2 minutes. I mean, what I could say is that I miss the opportunity to, I miss the chance to be like you two are present visually. I had my little box of things that I wanted to show myself. So I don't know if there is a chance to follow up with some messaging to the audience where I can put together a small document line with resources that they can click on to kind of like see a bunch of the things that I didn't have a chance to share because I wasn't visual.
Yeah, no,
I became a voice.
We'll send out a follow-up email to everybody who RSVP'd. If anyone's watching and you didn't RSVP to the Eventbrite, you can throw your email in the comment and I'll make sure you get it. And in the follow-up email, we'll make sure we connect with Luis and get together like all of the visual materials that he was hoping on showing you if his video was only working.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just share in a closing thought before we close out for sure is my favorite zine of all time is another one that a kid made because again they're brilliant. Is she made the same scene on every single page. She's like, this is me at my kitchen table, and this is me at my kitchen table, and this is me at my kitchen table, and I was like, that's awesome. So, I just want to end with that like, it just brings so much joy. And I think one of the things about zines, I think it's important that we're lifting our spirits always. And I think it gives us energy for the rest of everything. And I think, I don't know, it's been really fun talking. And I think even just being able to like smile and talk about something we love to do is in a way reason enough, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where can people both find you other than the handles scrolling across the bottom of the screen?
Yeah, so Letters Aligned is the name of my company. It's a small illustration business here in the Bay Area. And my Instagram is a great way. It's lettersaligned.com. It's all the same. I have a book coming out. It's published here in the Bay Area. Again, it could possibly be interpreted as a zine. And you can check that out. And anytime you want to reach out or say something, please do. I'm always looking to collaborate. I think that's when the best stuff is made.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, on my end, the Instagram handle there, cartoon distortion, has a link with an outlet to everything else I have where you can find about what I'm doing or get in touch with me. It's basically cartoondistortion.com, but without the dash. I couldn't get it without the dash in Instagram because Instagram game. I'm late in the game, but it's okay. And yeah, just the Instagram, like Meg said, is perfect. I have it listed as my, contact form on the website, so it works.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. Yeah, look at Meg and all those cute zines. All right. Thank you both so much for being here. It was
Thank you.
all of
Thank you for
Thank
bringing us
you.
together.
Yes.
And a pleasure meeting you both. I'm definitely gonna walk you both in the future.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Really
Please do.
collaborative zine sometime in our future, the three of us.
Awesome.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you everyone so much for being here. I learned so much and I'm feeling so inspired to like make zines about my short film and all sorts of things. So if you are able, we take contributions in a pay what you can form, which should be in the comments. And it will also be linked in the video description. If you're not able to contribute financially, that's totally fine. We are just really happy that you're here and a part of our community. So thank you. And yeah, events. We have upcoming events. So next week, our Lunch and Learn is how to make incentives for a successful crowdfunding campaign. I think I'm gonna have to add zines to that list. Tomorrow, we have a creative sustainability session with 3 journalists on what it's been like to report in 2020. And we have a crowdfunding workshop coming up August 27th. Yeah, and any other events you're looking for, just check us out at seed-and-spark.com/events. Thank you so much for being here.